Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would chat with you guys a little bit about a very controversial subject in the online fitness community, at least in the last decade, and that's good foods versus bad foods. And you get all these people who are in the flexible dieting world who feel like, oh, there's no such thing as bad foods, and I'm gonna disagree with that. I think that whole concept is ludicrous, and it's very clear which foods are causing people to overeat and have all sorts of other problems and insulin sensitivity issues, and be obese and everything else. Right? This isn't difficult to pin down. I can assure you there is not a single human being that any of you know who became morbidly obese and became diabetic from eating chicken salads. Okay, they don't exist. So, back over to the point. And also in the background, this is just me doing some of my dynamic work days and Metcon work. So for anyone who's looking and they chime in, well, you're not using heavy weight. It's like, nope, no, I'm not. Not till the end of this. I'm doing some heavy work at the end. But over to the point about food. This is one of these things that it seems like there's two camps, and I've tended to fall more and more into the other camp. And it's not that I disagree with the calories in, calories out concept. Now, I disagree that macros matter outside of protein. In other words, people who really think counting their exact macros does anything magical is also equally ludicrous, right? It's calories and protein. Protein is the only macronutrient that is particularly significant on that whole energy in, energy out equation as far as just its base caloric content, right? And hopefully people realize that. But over to the point. I think this idea is ludicrous, and it feels to me like it's clearly just a case of giving people an excuse to eat garbage, and people who trained really, really, really hard can get away with it. Okay, fine. If you're a serious lifter and you do conditioning work and heavy squats, and particularly people do a lot of leg work, you have a lot of wiggle room on that stuff. You know what? You can probably eat a decent amount of junk and not see negative health markers. But by that same token, I know medical practitioners and I know people who do DEXA scans and everything else who have clients who are kind of in the bodybuilding and physique type world who are not healthy. In other words, they have people who come in who are 9% body fat, and when they check their visceral fat around their organs, they have 5 pounds of visceral fat. Okay, you know the only way that's possible is excessive drug abuse or eating a really high processed junk food diet. In other words, these are the people who are thinking that they can just stand around eating junk food and garbage all day just because they're in a caloric deficit, and because their body fat goes down, their subcutaneous fat goes down, that they're not suffering health effects. Well, till you see their visceral fat and all those flexible calories they've had every day and all the refined sugar and junk food and everything else, that's where you see it. Same thing on their health markers over time. Just like we know from the whole Twinkie diet, the guy's health markers improved. The guy who lived on basically Twinkies, protein shakes, and a multivitamin, as he lost 30 pounds of body fat, all his health markers improved during the fat loss phase. And that's because losing body fat, if you're not at a relatively lean body fat, always improves your blood work every single time. But when you go to maintenance calories, if you stay on that same garbage deficient diet like he was doing, what happens? What happens? Your blood work starts looking a lot worse once you go to maintenance. Okay? It's a temporary fix. It's purely because of the deficit. And that is true. You can eat almost any garbage and your health markers will improve if you're obese and you get down into a healthy body fat range. The fat loss alone will improve it. But what ends up happening is that people who want to work these other foods in, and it's an excuse to eat garbage. This stuff's not food. All right? And that's my general viewpoint of it. It has energy, but these are just refined piles of garbage, whether you want to call them Pop-Tarts or pancakes or whatever, that we enjoy because they're these highly refined, hyper-palatable things, but they're not really food in the true sense because they have calories, but usually their nutritional value is just pretty bad. It's pretty low. They don't make you feel particularly good. And people want to eat stuff like this and all these refined sugars and things and excessive fructose loading or lots of fried foods that have been cooked in high temperature oils and stuff like that. And notice I didn't say anything necessarily about meat or saturated fat or dairy. Those things are fine. Those are whole foods. You know what? And if that's all people ever ate, everyone's health would be better. Okay? I want to make that clear. Even some of the foods that get demonized if that's the only stuff that people ate, our obesity epidemic would largely disappear. Our type 2 diabetes would largely disappear. Our cardiovascular disease would largely disappear, even if people sat around eating sugary fruit and full-fat dairy and red meat. Okay, if that's the worst things that you eat, literally the worst things that you ever eat for 10 years straight, it's going to be a lot harder for you to be obese and diabetic. Okay, that is not where these problems come from. And people have to grasp that. I mean, they want to discuss these things and argue about whole foods like this. When you look at the data, these foods are not really the real problems. Now, refined fats, you want to eat a bunch of butter. Like, you start piling 500 calories of butter into your food every day, like some low carbers and stuff do, your health markers do have a problem. Your blood work does look worse. But that same 500 calories of dairy fat coming from milk doesn't have the same effect. Okay? People need to understand that. You know, we can talk about fructose load, and, you know, if you get a bunch of fructose from bananas, but your diet's still overall complete, you might see some triglycerides go up and stuff, but it's usually not going to be horrifically bad. You'll see some negatives. It's not going to be usually that bad. Not enough that you should be freaking out over it. Even if you eat a bunch of it, you go eat the same amount of sugar in the form of table sugar or high fructose corn syrup. Notice I didn't even separate the two. Your health markers are going to look worse. You're going to develop visceral fat. You're going to have high triglycerides. You're going to predispose yourself to insulin sensitivity. So in the long term, people sitting around eating all of these foods and thinking just because they work out a little bit and they count their macros and they don't get too obese or they get lean on their subcutaneous fat, they think that this is going to work. Well, these foods have lower nutritional values. They negatively impact things like insulin sensitivity. That's going to affect your energy. That's going to affect your ability to train. You know, and that's a lot of, like, if you guys watch my training vlogs at this point, I put up my training vlogs, and I still do stuff that's not on camera every single week quite a bit. Right? I'm over a 500-pound squatter, well over a 300-pound bencher. I do large amounts of conditioning work. I do all this dynamic work. Even a lot of my 10-rep sets are relatively heavy. I'm in my 40s. Okay, I'm in my 40s. I don't eat processed foods. Like, I'll be honest, when this topic comes up, I mean, do I on occasion? And when I mean occasion, that doesn't mean once a week. I'm talking once a month. I will take a cheat evening once a month, and even then I might only do it if I've been fasting. Like, if I've been busy with other stuff and I know I can have a window to where I'm not going to eat because I'm not going to train or anything, and I'm doing certain social events, I might fast all the way until the afternoon, not have any breakfast, and I might eat some processed type junk foods. But it's never more than once in a month, and sometimes it's at once every couple of months, right? Don't do that. You know why? Because it doesn't facilitate my training, my recovery, my energy, my insulin sensitivity, because that stuff matters. I have to be able to train. I have to be able to be active. I have to be able to feel good from what I do. I don't have room for Pop-Tarts. I don't have room for ice cream. And I would suggest that, what about a lot of you people out there who don't even train as vigorously as I do? Some of the younger people who say, oh, there's no such thing as a bad food. They say this nonsense. That's cute when you're 22. It's cute when you're 22. Try maintaining a high degree of physical activity as you start to get older with that mindset. Try doing that. It's not going to pan out so well. You're going to find even things like some of the foods that you guys think of, they're not really a big deal. They start to, in fact, impact connective tissue inflammation. They can impact how your joints and tendons feel. You know what? My body feels good. Body feels good. In spite of all the training and the heavy weight, I don't throb and hurt in the morning like other people I know in my age group. All right, guys, the quality of your food here matters. It will affect your energy. It will affect things like your blood sugar, your insulin sensitivity, your blood markers, even when you're perfectly tracking your macros. And I would suggest to people there are bad foods, and we know what they are. Refined sugars, refined fats, and to some extent refined grains, fried foods like deep cooked vegetable oils. That's all junk food. That's all junk food. That's not food. That's garbage. That's garbage that we mix in with our food because it tastes good and it's calorically dense and hyper palatable. It's not food. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.